Hey guys, so today we're going to do the second half of chapter 7. So yesterday we were talking about how Fudge was going to be getting a bird and they were trying to decide what type of bird to get. Well, Peter said that he thought Fudge should get a mynah bird, and since Peter said it, that's what Fudge wanted. So where we left off yesterday is Peter and his grandma were in Tootsie's room dancing, and then Fudge comes in and says, "I saw him, my mynah bird." And Peter asked, "Where?" So today, let's finish finding out where he saw the mynah bird and what happens next. Okay, so, "I saw him. I saw my mynah bird," Fudge said. "Where?" I asked. "At the pet store," Fudge said. "We're going to bring him home tomorrow. They had to order a cage. He's all black with yellow legs and a yellow nose." "Yellow bill," I said. "Nose, bill, who cares?" Fudge said. "And he can talk." "Well, what can he say?" "He can say hello in French." "In French?" I asked. "That's right, in French," Mom said. "He's very cultured." "And I've already named him," Fudge said. "What did you name him?" Grandma asked. I expected him to say Pierre or Jacques, since he speaks French. "Uncle Feather," Fudge said. "Uncle Feather?" I said. "Yes, Uncle Feather," Fudge began again. "Isn't that a good name for a bird?" "It's, unusual," I said. "And interesting, right?" Fudge asked. "Oh yes, definitely interesting," I told him. "It's a real privilege," Fudge said, "isn't it?" "No, it's not a privilege," I told him. "It has nothing to do with privilege." I should never have used that word with such a little kid. He still didn't know how to use it. He probably never would. "So it's not a privilege," Fudge said. "So who cares?" And he began to sing. "Uncle Feather came to town, flying in the blue sky, yellow nose and yellow bills, and he belongs to me, oh my." "Come on, Grandma," Fudge said. "Dance with me now." He and Grandma held hands and danced around the room while Fudge sang his latest to the tune of Yankee Doodle. My family and their musical numbers were getting to be too much. So I took off for Alex's house and for some peace and quiet. The next day, Mom, Dad, and Fudge went down to the pet store and returned with Uncle Feather, complete with cage, cover, a box of food, and a box called Getting to Know Your Mynah, and a book called Getting to Know Your Mynah Bird. "Bonjour, bonjour," Uncle Feather said over and over again. "That means hello in French," Fudge told me, as if I didn't already know. Dad carried the cage up to Fudge's room, which happened to be next to my room, and all afternoon, all I heard was, "Bonjour, bonjour," in bird voice. I banged on the wall between my room and Fudge's. "Can you teach him to say something else?" I'm trying, Fudge hollered. I'm trying, Uncle Feather repeated. Swell, I thought. We just got Fudge out of the habit of repeating everything I said, and now we've got a bird who does the same thing. Why didn't I keep my big mouth shut at the dinner table that night? Why didn't I convince Fudge to listen to Mom and get a canary, or to Dad and get a parakeet? The next morning, when I went to have a look at Uncle Feather, he greeted me with, "Bonjour, silly." "Isn't he smart?" Fudge asked. "Doesn't he learn fast?" "Yeah, he's terrific," I said. As I left the room, Uncle Feather called out, "Goodbye, silly, goodbye." "Goodbye yourself," I said. Yourself, he repeated. "And he likes to eat worms and insects and plants," Fudge said at breakfast. "So I'll have to go find him some worms." "Oh no," Mom said. "He'll be very happy eating the food we bought for him at the pet store." "But Mommy," Fudge said, You wouldn't feed Tootsie just one kind of food, would you? That's different, Mom said. Tootsie is a baby. Uncle Feather is a bird. I know that, Fudge said, but Uncle Feather needs worms to be happy. You want him to be happy, don't you? I'm sure he can be happy without worms, Mom said, pushing her plate aside. Let's talk about this later, Dad said. It's not the best breakfast conversation. Worms, 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 Fudge sang. That's enough, Fudge, Dad said, but Mom was already in the bathroom, and she didn't come back to the table. Grandma came to visit the following weekend and was surprised to find that Fudge no longer slept in the hallway outside my parents' bedroom. I have to sleep in my own room now, Fudge told her. Uncle Feather needs me. Of course he does, Grandma said, standing in front of Uncle Feather's cage. And you're a lovely birdie, aren't you? Lovely birdie, Uncle Feather said. Grandma laughed. Oh my, and so smart. So smart, so smart. Oh my, so smart, Uncle Feather said. That night, Mom and Dad went out and Grandma stayed at home with us. We all watched TV together. Tootsie was on Grandma's lap, having her late night bottle. So, how's kindergarten going? Grandma asked Fudge. I have a nice teacher, he said. She says I'm as sweet as my name. Well, you are, aren't you? Grandma said. I snorted. Do you think I am? Fudge asked Grandma. I certainly do, Grandma told him. I snorted again. All the time? Fudge asked. Maybe not all the time, Grandma said, but most of the time. Then why do you come here to just play with Tootsie and not me? I come to see all of you, Grandma said, burping Tootsie. But you're always holding her, Fudge said, and singing silly songs to her. They're not silly, I said. They're from when Grandma was a little girl. You were a girl? Fudge asked, trying to get up on Grandma's lap. Certainly, Grandma said, shifting Tootsie into her other arm to make room for Fudge. You were like me? Little? Yes, Grandma said, and I went to school just like you. Fudge shoved Tootsie out of the way, so Grandma passed her to me. What did you do there? Fudge asked. Oh, I sang songs and painted pictures and played games and learned how to read. You learned to read in kindergarten? Maybe it was first grade, Grandma said, patting Fudge's head. It was a long time ago. It's hard for me to remember. You know what, Grandma? Fudge said. No. What? I'm the middle child now, so I need lots of attention. Who told you that? Grandma asked. I heard Mommy talking on the phone. It's more important for you to play games with me than with Tootsie, and you should try to remember that. What about me? I asked. Where do I fit in? You don't need attention, Fudge said. You're in 6th grade. I was beginning to get annoyed. That doesn't mean I don't need attention. Everybody needs attention, Grandma said. Even you? Fudge asked. Yes, even me, Grandma told him. Who gives you attention? Fudge asked Grandma. My family and my friends, Grandma said. You should get a bird, Fudge said. A bird would give you lots of attention. A bird wouldn't care if you were the middle child or not. Neither would a dog, I said. You should get a dog, like Turtle. As soon as he heard his name, Turtle looked up and barked. Tootsie opened her eyes and said, "Goo-goo gaga." That's right, I told her. Now go back to sleep. Grandma went upstairs to tuck Fudge into bed, and I went up to put Tootsie into her crib. Good night, sleep tight, Grandma said to Fudge. Good night, sleep tight, good night, Uncle Feather called. Grandma dropped the cover over his cage. It's the only way to make him be quiet. And even then, he kept on calling, good night, until I kicked the base of his cage. After we'd had Uncle Feather for 2 weeks, Fudge was ready to bring him to school for show and tell. Miss Ziff invited the other kindergarten class to come and see him, and I got special permission from Mr. Green to skip half of English and go down to Fudge's room in case of an emergency. Mrs. Hildebrandt's kindergarten class marched in and sat in a circle on the floor right behind Fudge's class. Uncle Feather's cage stood in the middle of the circle. When everyone was settled, Fudge pulled the cover off the cage and said, "Presenting Uncle Feather!" "Ooh," all the little kids said. "What a beautiful bird Farley has," Mrs. Hildebrandt said. "Isn't he a beautiful bird, class?" "Yes," Miss Hildebrandt's class answered, sounding like robots. "Yes, what?" Mrs. Hildebrandt asked. "Yes, Farley has a beautiful bird," her class said together. "He speaks French," Fudge said. "Does he really?" Mrs. Hildebrandt asked. "Yes," Fudge told her. "Well, what a coincidence," Mrs. Hildebrandt said. "So do I." She went right up to Uncle Feather's cage, bent way over, and said, "Parlez-vous français?" Uncle Feather cocked his head, looked straight at her, and said, "Bonjour, silly." All right, chapter 8 is called Naturally Fortified. So we will pick up tomorrow and see what happens next in our story. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you're staying safe, that you're having fun, and you're enjoying time at home. Know that I miss you all, and I can't wait until we can see each other again. All right, bye for today, guys.